Hey guys, I'm a big walking simulator enjoyer, Herald of Thunder build enjoyer, and as long as there's something new, every league I try to do a Herald of Thunder build. But all of those builds usually use Inpulsa. Well, the Poison Herald of Thunder did not use Inpulsa, but let's say most of them use Inpulsa for explosions, because the main point of Herald of Thunder builds is going fast and just destroying enemies very quickly, chain exploding, and just having a good time clearing. So this time, since the Chieftain got reworked and now Chieftain has inbuilt explosions and we have exploded tattoos, I thought I'm gonna try to do a Chieftain Herald of Thunder build and see if those explosions can kind of replace Impulse explosions. This is kind of experimental build. I didn't really do any big bosses. This isn't a very high budget build as always. I was just using this to farm up to tier 16 maps, do Sirus, something like that. And that's pretty much it. So for map clear, this is mainly for map clear. For map clear, it's kind of okay. It's not very consistent. I do have over 5 million DPS, around 6k life. I do have 80 all elemental resistances. I do generate endurance charges very quickly. And I'm also using Immortal Call on left click. But it's not really as tanky as I wanted it to be. I kind of expected as a Chieftain to be tankier with this, because normally Herald of Thunder builds trying to be just very fast and do as much damage as possible, and they are like very glass cannon. So I wanted to make it feel a bit tankier, and it is feeling a bit tankier, but still sometimes it just gets one-shotted by random things. And the clear speed is also not very consistent, because you do need exploded tattoos as well. But I didn't have enough strength points to add more exploded tattoos. So it's still lacking a bit more chance to explode naturally, plus Chieftain only has 5% chance to explode, but that one does a lot of damage. So overall, it doesn't feel as good as Impulsa chain explosions, but it can chain explode like multiple rooms, but it's not as consistent. Also, this build is using Annihilating light yet again, which means capping resistances was a challenge. But the good thing about Chieftain is that when you get fire resistance, you also get 50% of that fire resistance as cold and lightning resistances. So it is a bit easier to cap elemental resistances using Annihilating light as a Chieftain. However, Herald of Thunder builds usually require quite a few uniques. I am also using Utula's Hunger. I really wanted to try using Utula's Hunger with Herald of Thunder, because Herald of Thunder builds usually use uniques that don't have any life. So for example, Storm Secret rings don't have any life modifier, and you need 2 of them. Algor Mortis gloves also don't have any modifier, and they are the best gloves for the Herald of Thunder build. Voice of the Storm, which gives lucky lighting damage, also don't have any life modifier. So you are left pretty much with just helmet, belt, boots, and body armor. And the body armor, Utula's Hunger, give a lot of flat life. And you don't need to get as much percentage life from the passive tree. So you can become pretty, wouldn't say tanky, but pretty thick without too much effort, while still using uniques with no life. I will talk about the items that I use, the links, the supports, and everything else, but the main idea is just Chieftain explosions, explosion tattoos. You essentially want 2 sources of explosions, because the one source, the Chieftain explosion alone, is not going to be enough. And then you cannot use any other auras, but you can still use things that do reserve mana, like Aspect of the Spider, and the reason of that is Calamitous Vision, which does give Lone Messenger, which does block all the other aura skills. But then again, you're gonna be 6-linking Herald of Thunder. You're probably gonna reserve most of your mana anyway. So tankiness wise, you cannot really use Determination. You cannot even use Banner. You could use Arctic Armor, but instead of that I chose to use Aspect of the Spider, because that gives it damage. But actually I did die a couple times because I don't have freeze immunity. I am using not freeze immunity Pantheon. I am actually using upgraded Soul of Lunaris. This build has many cool things, because you do damage to yourself with the Storm Secret rings, and it is a hit. So you can actually even use this thing, the Fed upgrade, 6% reduced elemental damage taken if you have been hit recently. It doesn't say if you have been hit by an enemy. So it does work with self hits. So you always get that one. Also a bit more physical mitigation from this. Another thing, Soul of Grackle, 1% additional physical damage reduction for each hit you have taken recently, up to 5%. you pretty much just instantly get that 5% because Herald of Thunder procs 8 times per second with the perfect rings. And also I anointed Inexorable. Inexorable gives 24% chance to gain endurance charge when you are hit, and you are hit 8 times per second. On average you basically get 2 endurance charge per second. So you can generate endurance charges very quickly. And I'm also using Immortal Call. Using Steel Skin or Avant-Garde skills is not really worth it because Storm Secret does damage to you and it just drains that shield very quickly. Now another thing, in the final version I am using Shock Nova, not really for damage but to apply big shocks. And I can actually even shock Sirus for 60% shock effect, and it also can apply sap, which isn't like a high chance. It's in my case 29% chance to apply to enemies in chilling areas, and I do automatically cast chilling areas with Cold Snap with the cast when damage taken. And also for clearing I have another cast when damage taken with the arc. It is arc linked to overcharge, but it is lower level arc, and for that you only need to apply shock. And I am able to also proc elemental overload with like 3% chance, 3% critical chance. It is not very reliable, but it is reliable enough for Herald of Thunder to actually proc elemental overload. And you can also get boost enchantments for increased critical strike chance if you haven't crit recently, so that would also give quite a bit more crit chance, and it just lets you proc elemental overload more reliably. So it doesn't really have any like difficult conditions. It's pretty much most of the things are guaranteed. You just go to the enemy, use Shock Nova. You have to be positioned properly. The ring is the one that does guarantee a shock. I'm using actually Al quality Shock Nova. Anomalous Al quality. Ring shocks as if dealing 100% more damage. So it doesn't really do more damage, but it kind of pretends to do more damage for shock calculation. So the ring is the ring, and you need to position yourself properly to hit enemy with that ring. So you just position properly, use Shock Nova, and then conduct it, and then that's it. You may have to actually spam Shock Nova because lightning numbers are from pretty low to pretty high, but you do get a lucky hit or lucky lightning damage with the Voice of the Storm, so it's not that difficult to proc a high lightning hit and proc 60% shock. The budget of this build is also not really high, like not counting a 6-link. You don't need 2 6-link. You can start with 1 6-link, but it is somewhere around 10 divines, probably a bit more than 10 divines right now, because tattoos can be actually pretty expensive. The explode tattoos are like 15-20 chaos each. Unless you're buying in a big bulk, then it's going to be a lot more expensive. I am also using 2 large cluster jewels and 4 medium cluster jewels actually. Now you also need to be careful with the rare jewels. Make sure you don't place rare jewels in the bad spots. Because of this node, Namahu's Flame Advance from Chieftain will check a rare jewel position and convert all the elemental damage nodes into, or any other damage nodes into fire damage nodes. So if it's elemental damage normally here, but it is turned into fire damage nodes, but it doesn't convert cluster jewels nodes themselves. So don't place any rare jewels, for example, in here, because it will convert these elemental damage nodes into fire, and you don't want fire damage. Ideally, for the most damage you would want to use 3 Grand Spectrum jewels. It wouldn't really push the damage that much more, but they're also kind of expensive. The last time I checked was over 3 divines each, so depending on your budget you could squeeze out more damage, you could figure out a bit better defenses as well. And I am only running 3 flasks because of I have to sustain Bismuth flask 100% of the time, because that's the only thing that caps my resistances. Because I'm using an Annihilating Light, you can cap resistances through jewels, through like Bismuth flask. You could even use like Impossible Escape. There are many ways to optimize this, but again, I'm not sure if this is better than Inpulsa. Inpulsa Explosion just feels smoother, cleaner, and cheaper. I'm gonna quickly go over my supports and stuff like that. So Herald of Thunder, level 21, quality 20 here. I believe it costs like 180 here, around that price. It is linked to Anomalous Cruelty. That is just to increase critical chance a bit for the elemental overload. Then Inspiration, again for the critical chance, but you also need Inspiration elsewhere because it will not ramp up Inspiration stacks. So I do have cast when damage taken with Arc, which is also linked to Inspiration. So that one ramps up inspiration stacks. Then Awaken Annihilating level 5, because it also gives +1 to supported lighting skill gems. Awakened Elemental Focus level 5 again, another +1. Awakened Lighting Penetration, this one is applying lighting exposure, that's my only source of lighting exposure. And I also have another +1 in here. This tattoo I believe was not very expensive, I don't remember the price, but you can only have one of these on further attribute points. You cannot mix with like different ones. I tried to get Onslaught in here, but they don't stack, you cannot have two. Now the amulet, you may think about the new amulet, the replica Dragon's Fangs Flight, or Dragon's Flight Fang, whatever it is. +3 to Herald of Thunder is not as good as Voices of the Storm. Then the Anomalous Shock Nova in the other setup is linked to Overcharge, Inspiration again, Lighting Penetration, Life Tap, and Empower. And yes, Life Tap and Inspiration, because again, Inspiration is being ramped up by Arc anyway. Another casting damage taken, like lower level casting damage taken with Life Tap and Cold Snap. In order to get better mana sustain, you may need to get the Life Mastery. Skill cost life instead of 30% of mana cost. Just take it early on. You could, to squeeze a bit more damage, get Alqualt Conductivity with Qualt granting increased course effect. From the passive tree, the cluster jewels that I'm using, you need at least one Dorian's Lessons. Like I said, I'm using 2 jewels. You need one to get Leech, and then you also want damage and AoE and resistances. And on medium jewels, you want 2 jewels with Self-Fulfilling Prophecy. You also want Dark Messenger for AoE of Herald. You want your Herald of Thunder to reach from as far as possible. Obviously Lone Messenger. To get the most damage, you also want Empowered Envoy and Dark Messenger. So I got 2 of these. Although I did not reach level 95, that would be like the final step. I would get this one and then socket another rare jewel. I am using Brutal Restrain in here. I searched specifically the one that gives increased movement speed. Movement speed in here for only 1 point, and I do need Endurance Charge. Another movement speed in here, which I take naturally. This one I normally wouldn't take, but this also has 20% elemental damage, so because Herald of Thunder is not affected by any of the spell modifiers. Not by spell damage, not by spell crit, not by flat damage to spells, so normally this wouldn't really do anything. But it does give 20 LE damage. And also getting Onslaught on, you gain Onslaught for 8 seconds on kill. So this is for clear speed. And the Traitor in here. I am also using Forbidden Jewels, but this is kind of questionable. If you got a lot of currency, get Aspect of Carnage from, that's a lot of currency, that would be like over 100 divines for 2 jewels. Aspect of Carnage from Berserker to get more damage, but I'm getting, this is just to get a bit more AoE and a bit more damage. Wouldn't say that it's needed. I was experimenting to see how much AoE I need to feel good, and it's hard to tell if it's really worth it. So you could use normal jewel in here. The more normal jewels you use, the more strength you're also gonna get. So if I were to use normal jewel in here, all the small nodes would also get extra 3% or extra flat free strength. While leveling, I did switch to Herald of Thunder whenever I could equip rings at level 56. Make sure that by that point you should be able to equip Utula's Hunger. Make sure you don't have any life modifiers on other equipments, and you should have enough life sustain to just sustain those rings, because they do a lot of damage to you early on if you don't have enough life sustain and maximum life. So you can get extra 50 life regen, flat life regen, pretty useful early on as well. And then just take these points, give a lot of life regen to increase maximum elemental resistances from this, 3 more from here, another one from boots. So I'm getting extra 5 to maximum elemental resistances, and because of Chieftain's Valako node, it becomes maximum cold and lighting as well. And you do, by the way, want the helmet enchantment if you want to squeeze in something else. If you don't really care about Aspect of the Spider or squeezing in Arctic armor, you don't really need to worry about the helmet enchantment too much. So yeah, that pretty much covers this build. I'm doing another build with Chieftain. It's gonna be again explosions. I want to experiment more with explosions, but it's gonna be a very weird build, and I'm not sure if it's gonna function properly. But it's gonna be Ignite with Inpulsa explosions, Chieftain explosions, and also like Ignite proliferation from Barracks Ring, and also Death Wish helmet to explode minions to do good damage for single target, because the clear speed is pretty much gonna be with the Inpulsa explosions, hopefully, and Chieftain explosions, and then only for single target I would need to use Stone Golem and Death Wish. Hopefully that's gonna work. If it works, it should have amazing clear speed. If not, I may rework into something else. So yeah, for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.